What is up, winning wealthers? It's Geoff and B-Rock, actually G-Money and B-Rock here. We are back today. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a little Ask Me Anything. Our fantastic viewers came up with some questions for us, and we're going to periodically do this from time to time. So let's have at it.
All right, so the first question we have is, when did you make your first $1 million? You go first, I'll go second.
It's probably pretty similar, but I mean, so it would be, when did I cross the $1 million mark in net worth? And so that equates to the amount of equity that you have within properties. So I would say, I don't know, it had to be sometime around 2020. I mean, you answer yours, and then I can probably back into mine a little bit better.
Like, I think a lot of people would say the first time you made your $1 million, there's a difference between, making $1 million in income in the year or like $1 million in net worth, right? So I think you and I are both referencing when we hit $1 million net worth line. Yeah. And I think, it would have been 2020. So I would have been, I think, about 26 years old at that time. I think it was after we closed one of our
Mabit and Breeds
property, which is a great one we still have. I remember that was certainly a milestone in my career for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is that, so I've never made $1 million in a year. That's still a goal that I have, and and even that doesn't really feel like, so when people ask, did you make your first $1 million, like, did you get a windfall of cash of $1 million, right? So, but we're not talking about that. We're talking more about, like, every time you buy a property, if there's value add, components with that, you can add, equity to your balance sheet. And so around 2020, I don't even remember how well. I'm a little sick today, so I can't. My brain's a little fuzzy.
Probably around the same time.
Yeah.
But that's what's awesome about real estate. It's a lot of, like, deals you buy is you add a lot to your net worth, right? It might not be like you're getting a huge payday at closing. Most of the time, it's more so just you're getting these big chunks of equity, right? And then you're going to get trickles of cash flow. And then when you sell it 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, if you do sell, then that's when you realize that, that liquidity or the cash you added to your net worth.
Yeah. There's a great podcast out there called My First Million, and I'd love to be on there. Sam and Sean, they're awesome. Someday, I'm coming for you. But they talk a lot about this stuff as well. And real estate's a long-term game, right? You can build up your net worth and your balance sheet, and then when you sell those properties, if you sell them, you're able to realize, larger liquidity events, or you're able to take loans against those.
Then you roll it, and that's when you really start.
Roll it into something else.
You sell a property, right? You might make a couple $100,000, and then you roll that into the next property, and then that doubles. And that's, as we do this longer and talk to people that have been doing it for longer than us, like, that's really where you see the big gains, right? Is when you sell something, roll that into the next one, double that, right? And your cash flow is growing. I mean, and we're kind of starting to hit that stride here over the past few years. I think, honestly, like, the first like 3 years I was in real estate from when I started, like, I never really made any money. Like, I made a couple $100 a month in cash flow, but it was like, I remember, like, 3 years into it, we got one check for something. I can't remember what it was, but it was like my first, like, here's an actual, like, remember I, like, showed my parents, like, the past 3 years I've been working like this, I just got this check. Yeah. And that was,
I've been investing in real estate for over 10 years, right? And it's such a hockey stick. Such a hockey stick. But the nice thing is that the longer you do it, the more trials and tribulations you can go through and overcome adversity, the more that hockey stick continues to increase and increase and increase. All right, second question we have here, B-Rock. Have you ever made a mistake investing in real estate? And what was that? That's kind of funny.
Yeah, the first one that comes top of mind. There's a few. I mean, of course there's mistakes. I mean, any one that's in any sort of business in any capacity, right, makes mistakes. If they say they've never made a mistake, they're probably lying, I would say. But the first one I would think, then we have a full episode on it. So the 28 West story, right? So I think Apartment from Hell, I think was one of our early episodes we did. Go back and listen to get the whole thing. But the snapshot of it is the biggest mistake, I guess, summed it up to location, right? At the end of the day, location, right? It's an old school saying. It's very true. Like, we bought something, it was our first big deal we did in a rough location. A C-class location, even maybe close to a D. And that was, I think, the biggest mistake, right, was just kind of overseeing that location and not factoring in some stuff that goes along with a rough location. There's certainly investors out there that do really well in buying stuff in those locations, and you certainly can. But I think you just have to have you got to have a lot of things in check before you go into a deal like that, and that's ultimately I don't think we did.
Yeah, well, what I would say about that particular deal is that we also had, so location. Let me back up. So yesterday we were just working through an investment sort of matrix. Like, how do we weight certain characteristics of a deal before we decide to move forward on it? And location was the highest weighted factor, and that's because if you buy a deal in a great location, it can really cover up a lot of other mistakes or bad luck. So, for example, on that deal, we learned the difference between physical occupancy and economic occupancy, meaning that particular deal, we were getting financing from Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae does something called 90 for 90, so it's got to be at least 90% occupied for 90 days. The group that we bought it from was pretty savvy and sophisticated. They filled the building with a bunch of people that we wouldn't have wanted as our tenants so that they could meet the 90% occupancy mark. Those tenants weren't great tenants, so we eventually realized, down the road that we had to evict a lot of them. When you evict a lot of tenants like that in a rougher neighborhood, rougher area, they don't go the same way that you or I would go. They beat the hell out of the place. So we blew through our CapEx budget, turning these units. And so there was that. And then COVID hit right after that. So we also got hit with a lot of bad luck. Now, no investors lost any money. Brock and Adam and I took out a line of credit and basically floated the property until we were able to then sell it at a profit and get out of the deal. But that one had a lot of sleepless nights. I don't have any gray hairs, but I assume if I did, that would be because of it. But what I would also say, too, about mistakes in real estate is, and not to cut you off, but they happen at every level, right? I can think back to when I had just a duplex or when I had 6 units or whatever, right? And, at each level, you're kind of like, oh, my God, like what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And if you just continue to fight through and push through it, I remember talking to Brock about this deal, and I really remember, because that was when we first took on any investor dime, like any investor capital. And I said, my God, I knew I was going to continue investing in real estate, but I'm like, our business is screwed before we even got started. And we fought through it. We persevered. We got out of it relatively unscathed. And we learned a ton of lessons on that one. So I would say for anybody that's looking to invest with someone, find somebody that's made a lot of mistakes, because the more mistakes that you've made and fought through, the more learning experience and lessons that you have to draw on. And you'd rather learn from their experiences. That's why one of the reasons I love the Founders podcast, because you can learn from mistakes that other really successful founders and business people have made without having to go through them yourself. But sometimes experience is the best teacher. When we first started, we didn't really have a niche. We bought multifamily. We bought 2 office buildings, shitty office buildings, but they were in a great location, thankfully. Strip mall, self-storage, you name it. We were just buying anything that we thought was, because we missed on the location thing on the first deal, but anything else that we thought was in a good location that we thought had value add potential that would cash flow from day one. The problem is with that is we were sort of the jack of all trades, master of none. Now, the good news is we've got the experience under our belt to manage multiple different types of asset classes and know that very good. But what I think was a mistake is we didn't have a specific niche. And now, going forward in 2024, we focus specifically on Class B industrial real estate between 20,000 and 150,000 square feet. And what does that do? It allows us to gain more and more and more experience in that specific niche. It allows us to go to the brokerage community and say, this is specifically the type of deal that I'm looking for. And if you have something come across your plate like this, think of us first. And I think that's been a mistake that some people make too, is they're just, going to go buy whatever deal comes across their desk versus really having a specific buy box and niche that they focus on.
So to summarize that concisely, you're on a roll there, was focused on location, right? Make sure you're buying something in a good location. If you're going to stray off that location path, make sure you have the systems in place to be able to manage it. Second, I would say there is making sure you do the proper due diligence if you're buying something, understanding what your tenant base is, right? Like you said, we evicted 50% of our tenants in the first few months. which could have partly been avoided, right, if we'd done a little bit more due diligence on the specific tenant, and not just kind of high picture view of the property. Third one I would say is we kind of touched on it, but adding to that a little bit is if you ever buy something with a parking garage, hire a structural engineer to look at the parking garage, because that's a whole separate story that maybe we'll get into, but that's also a learning lesson that sticks out with me.
All right, next question we got. What makes a great real estate investor, B-Rock?
I would say first and foremost, in my opinion, is understanding the numbers. Someone that can understand how to analyze a deal and what makes a good deal is very important. That's where I kind of started and where I think my main focus is and most value I bring is understanding how to analyze a deal from the numbers, right? So if you don't understand, how to create value, what a proper expense ratio is, how to look at the right debt, all those sort of things, you're not going to be able to properly understand how to value a property and how to buy it at the right price, right? And then with that is how do you add value to that property, right? If you're going out and running this 10-year scenario of how you're going to add value, actually implementing what you say you're going to do. It's one thing to go and just create a spreadsheet and say, okay, I'm going to take it from this value to this value in 5 years, and here's the numbers that show how to do it. But if you actually don't have the process in place and knowledge to actually go and increase the rents, decrease expenses, whatever you might be doing, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Next one we got, can money buy happiness?
No. But a surefire way to not be happy is to be worrying about your bills every month. So I don't think money can buy happiness. I think having money doesn't necessarily just equate to happiness, but it can facilitate a lot of things in life. It can get you out of jams. I've been in some jams before, personally in life, and having a lot of money set aside and having a lot of cash flow from alternative investments has really saved my ass in certain ways. So money alone can't buy happiness, in my opinion. I think you really have to, and that's why this Winning Wealth podcast is not just, hey, how to build financial wealth. It's more of a well-rounded thing, wealth, health, and happiness. I think there's other components to life that are really important. You read stories about billionaires that didn't have a great relationship with their family, never spent a lot of time with their kids because they were so focused on building their business, didn't focus at all on their health, and now they're super fat, not healthy. I mean, not having a good social system around you and a good family environment and being in really shitty health is a pretty easy way to be unhappy comparatively to if you're, maybe you have a little bit less money, but you've still gotten to a point of financial independence, but you're in great shape. You feel good in the morning. You wake up ready to tackle the day. The people that are closest to you love you and love spending time with you. That is what I think is true happiness. If you just have a business that makes, an astronomical amount of money, but you're kind of owned by the business, you're likely to be pretty unhappy in that scenario too.
I would disagree to a certain extent. I think it can be used as a tool to buy happiness, but it's not the end all be all. Like, I think it's not automatically a given that you're going to be happy if you're loaded, right? I think it's more so there's a lot of situations that you can be in and that you can buy happiness to a certain degree, right? Like, who's not happy going on a nice vacation, or being able to set your own work schedule. I agree that a lot of people get caught up in, they're just working, and they forget about everything else in life.
I think this might be the age difference going on here a little bit. Brock hasn't been through some of the things, but in a sense, it can buy short-term happiness, in my opinion.
What are the examples of things you've been through then?
A divorce, that's one. That's an unhappy scenario for anyone that goes through. Very amicable divorce. Shout out Katie.
But was it used as a tool though to help out in that situation? For
sure. I mean, like if I was strapped for cash, I wouldn't have been able to essentially move across the country, rent a nice apartment, figure out my life in that sort of way, be good to Katie as well, while still, figuring out my life going forward. So money can facilitate the ability to put you in a better position, right? And being strapped for cash is a surefire way to be unhappy, but real genuine happiness, I don't think comes from just having money. And like, if you were to ask me, hey, again, this is my perspective on it. If you were to ask me, say, hey, you can be a billionaire or you can be worth $30 million. If you're a billionaire, the option is you're grossly overweight, your kids don't like you, or you might even not even have kids, You've been through numerous divorces. You don't really have a good relationship with your business partners. You work 60, 70 hours a week. Or if you're worth 30, 40 million, but you have a family that loves you, you're in great shape, you aren't owned by your business, you own the business and can work more when you want to versus when you don't want to. You could still fly private. You could still go on a lot of nice vacations. I would choose that route.
Okay, what if, to make that scenario a little more realistic though, if you were the billionaire one, like you said, you know, your family hates you, you're overweight, you're working a ton, or the other option is you work a minimum wage job and you're super healthy, you have a great family, you're excited about life. Which one are you choosing there? But you're working, 40 hours a week and you hate it.
Well, at that point, no matter what, you'd want the $1 billion because it's more resources available for you to go figure out how to make it right. At that point, what you could do is just sell the business, move on, say, I'm not consumed by this business and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to be healthy and how to figure out how to reconcile these relationships.
So what you just said right there means money can buy happiness.
What I'm saying is it can facilitate the ability to be happy. And I'm saying is
I think I won that one. I think I beat you.
I don't think so. You're going to look back someday, and we're going to play this clip. So to caveat this, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of Bill Gates at all, but he does have a quote that says, I want everybody to strive for, putting themselves in a greater financial position. But after $10 million, like net worth, a cheeseburger tastes the same. And so I do believe in that to a certain extent. And a lot of these guys that that I study that are really wealthy business people, it becomes more of a game to them after a certain point. Like you're getting to a point of financial independence, but after that, the more deals you do, it's because you're competitive, because you got really good at honing your skill. You enjoy
What's that? I know we've probably talked about it here before. I forget the name of it. There's like a blog post or something that talks about like certain levels of net worth, right? And where kind of what it changes in your life. And I think it's something like that where I've seen other things about it where it's like once you hit, I'm just making it up, it might be $1 million a year, right? Like the incremental happiness you get from, making 50 grand a year to $1 million a year is going to be 10x more than the incremental happiness you get from, 1 million to 5 million or something.
The blog post you're talking about, and we should link to it in the show, is from a guy named Financial Samurai. He's awesome. And, he absolutely talks through the different levels of wealth, like, essentially poor to, okay, now this person has a net worth of $1 million to 5 million, then 5 to 10, and then over 20 to 50, and then 50 to 100. Once you get to be a centimillionaire, right? I can assure you, even though you think you won this battle, that if you ask the person, it's all relative, right? Yes, $1 billion versus someone that's minimum wage and really strapped for cash, that's just so different. But $1 billion versus someone that's worth $100 million, and the 100 millionaire is extremely happy, and the billionaire, and here's another thing I would say, if you had, literally, I would guess that almost any 80-year-old billionaire would trade places with you and I right now, because the one thing they can't buy back is their time.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
In a sense, right?
Just can't take the L.
No, I don't take L's very well, unless I'm on the golf course. And I take a lot of those. Trying not to anymore, though. But in a sense, yes, having resources. We live on an economic planet. I mean, you've got to be able to buy goods and services to be able to put yourself in a better position when things come up. If you can't pay for your grandma's health bills, right? If you're strapped for cash, you're not going to be very happy. But at a certain point, and I don't know when that is it 10, 15, 20, 100 million, whatever, at a certain point, money doesn't buy you happiness. It's more about some of those other things. So that's a good debate. All right, next question. Would you rather work 80 hours a week doing something you love or 20 hours a week doing something you hate? And I'm assuming this would be for the same amount of money, same amount of economic value.
I would say I'd go with the 80-hour one. I think if it's something I love, right, it's like then I'm enjoying doing it. If I'm only working 20 hours a week, like what am I doing with the rest of my time, right? I think at a certain point you kind of run out of fun things to do, right, or hobbies or everything. So I think I could go either way, but I think I'd settle on the 80 hours a week if I'm truly enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, the questions from our guests are making it tough because they're not, and I appreciate that, but they're not like cut and dry answers. I could go either way, right? At the same time, I'm in a position where it's like I work more than I did when I was in a W-2 job, and I worked a shitload then too. But a lot of it doesn't feel like work. I'm doing things that I love. I love talking to people about real estate all the time, and so it's a passion for me. So it doesn't feel like work a lot of times. But that being said, I do know that if I, could work 20 hours a week doing something, hate's a hard word, but something that was just I don't love, and I can make $1 million doing that, the other 20, 30, 40 hours a week, I could probably pour into other things that I really love. It's a toss-up. I mean, if it got closer, like 60 and 40 or 60 and 30, right? Then it gets a little bit harder, but that's I can't give a definitive answer.
I think it depends on what season you are in life too, right? Like right now, I would take the 80-hour option, but when I'm 60, I wouldn't want to work 80 hours, right? I mean, it's but then again, like everyone we talk to in real estate, right, that we know is like, I think this applies in a lot of businesses, right? Is like you never really these guys never really retire.
Yep.
Right. Like you're going to get to a point where you slow down and you're just kind of strategically involved in different things. And you might only work 10 or 20 hours a week, but it's like you never really see someone that's like, okay, I'm 60 years old. Like a lot of conventional careers, right? Where it's like, you hit 63. Like my dad and uncles talk about all the time, right? Like I'm retiring next year or whatever. And it's
fired
like,
up.
You got to wait till you're 65 to retire so you can get a certain amount of pension, right? And it's like that's the end all be all, right? But it's like when you're in something you enjoy doing, it's like you don't want to just be done with it, right? Like you want to do it forever.
That's one of the reasons why I made the decision to go full time and build this real estate business, because it's something I could truly see myself doing and being. I don't ever want to retire. I could truly see myself being involved in this business until I'm in the 80s, right? But I don't want to be grinding away when I'm 80, right? Like back to the other happiness stuff, right? At that point, it's more about spending time with your family, being on vacations. Hopefully by then I keep telling people I don't even want to have a laptop, just a phone, dial in a couple times here and there, make some big decisions, move on, and let the team handle it. And you can really build that in a real estate business.
Next one we got, I think this one's interesting, is how do you go about introducing yourself to someone? Let's say you're at a networking event and they're a total stranger. How would you introduce yourself?
I go to a lot of these networking events. I walk right up to them. I smile, shake their hand. I say, I'm Geoff Stewart. I have a real estate private equity company, and we're always looking to find deals and find investor partners, and happy to help anyone that we can. So that's how I do it for the most part. I mean, now there's caveats there too. And you should tell as many people as you possibly can about what you do and be kind and warm and shake their hand. And that's why I try to add something too. We're happy to help as many people as we can. But at the same time, like, it just depends. Like, if I know that the person is, like, if I have an understanding of what their background is, I might tweak it a little bit. But that's the quick elevator pitch that I give to everybody.
I would agree with that too, because in certain scenarios, if you're at introducing yourself to someone that might not be like in that world, right? You might just say, okay, I'm in real estate, right? But if it's someone that understands that world, you'd go a little bit further to say, like, I'm in private equity real estate, or I'm a real estate investor and this, right?
When you tell people most of the time that you're in real estate, they think you're a real estate agent.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah. Unless they understand, like, they'll have a follow-up question, right? But it's all the time, right? It's like you tell someone you're in real estate and they're like, start asking you about, selling their house and what do you think their house is worth? And it's like, well, there's so many different things, like any other business, right? There's different sectors of real estate, and that's what people instantly go to, right? Is they think you're a real estate agent, selling
I was houses. On a golf course last week, and I kind of made the mistake where, actually, I didn't even really introduce somebody. A friend of mine had told them, whatever beforehand. And this was on like hole 2, and we're on the tee box, and he's like, "Hey, Geoff, you're in real estate, right? How much do you think that house is worth?" And I'm like,
it's just so different.
I could take a guess, my guess might be better than yours if you don't know anything about real estate or whatever, just because I try to stay in tune with the market in general, and because I would like to buy a house on a golf course. So like I have some general background knowledge, but it's so different than valuing residential real estate.
I agree. What about when you were, something I remember looking back at was when I was still working my full-time job and doing real estate on the side. And I remember there was like a specific inflection point where I was like, I was still doing both, but I was like, going forward, I'm now just, when someone asks me what I do, right? It used to be, well, I do this and then I do this on the side. I'm going to just say this is what I do. And it's, although it wasn't my full-time thing at the time, I kind of owned that persona of like, this is what I now do full-time.
I think I could have done a better job at that. I think when I was doing that, I would people would ask me what I do, and I would just kind of be a little bit vague and say I do a lot of things. And I still, even though I'm full-time in real estate, my main objective is to grow our real estate private equity business. I don't, someday I'm not going to just be pigeonholed into that. I do have a really good understanding of B2B technology, SaaS, right? I have a decent understanding of AI and how that can be applied to business. I have a good understanding of buying lower middle market companies, service-based businesses, things like that. And so, I would kind of just take the approach that, hey, I'm a business guy. I do a lot of different things. I have a real estate company, and here's some other things that I've done too. But now I think it's a lot better that you can be totally specific around this is exactly what I do.
All right, next one we got is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
All right, now this is also a hard question because there's a lot of great advice out there. And so I don't know if this is the best one ever, but I was given this advice by Uncle G to G Money in the making. Uncle G's Grant Cardone. This is like 12 years ago, before he was really big. I think I hit him up on LinkedIn, and he said, always act hungry. And that the thing is, if you're not acting like you're hungry to get better and at whatever it is, or you're hungry for deals, or you're hungry for investors, or you're hungry to make a difference in whatever you're doing, and you're just kind of like, well, yeah, we have this real estate offering, like, don't really care if anyone wants to join or not. It's a good deal, but it's like the hungry person tends to win, right? They're the one that's going out there and making something happen. And so I've always thought about that advice, and I always try to act hungry, and I'm going to try to see if I can find this right on the air. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to, but let me see.
Yeah, I would say, as I think about that, I can't really trace back like one specific piece of advice I was given verbally, but I think what I would say is more so just what I learned like growing up from my dad specifically, right? So I think two things. First off, just working hard. Like I always saw like he just was always working hard, always had something to do. I'd always find things for me to do, right? And just instilled like not being lazy, right? And working hard for what you want to achieve. Second one would be seeing, I've probably talked this before, right? But like my dad owned 2 duplexes growing up. And he worked, he drove a cement truck. So very blue collar work, right? But owned those 2 duplexes that were able to afford him, other luxuries in life, right? Having a pool, having a boat, right? Providing a good lifestyle, right? So growing up, just seeing those 2 things combined really led me to, okay, if I can work hard and take the principles of owning real estate, but do that, at a much larger scale, I can achieve that, much larger lifestyle. So I'd say those are the pieces of advice growing up that I would call out.
All right, Brock, last question. What is the best part about having money?
I would say having the ability to do spontaneous decisions, right? Like if there's something that, okay, like 2 weeks from now, I know you were stealing some of your stuff here, but I agree with it. So I think like, if I just, okay, I want to go on a vacation in 2 weeks, right? And it's like, okay, I can take those 3 days off, and yeah, it's going to be $1,000. Like it's fine. Like I don't have to necessarily plan ahead of time for that, right? And it's not like stuff I have to plan that 6 months in advance, right? Being able to make spontaneous decisions like that. One example I've thought of before, and I think I've talked to people about, is when we've talked a little bit before, like levels of wealth, right? And I think for me, one thing that I kind of saw change, right, was, it's a simple example, right? But like, okay, let's say it's a random Tuesday night, and I want to take someone out and go out for a nice dinner, and I'm gonna go spend $200-$300 on a nice dinner, and that, like, I think I've gotten to the point where like that doesn't bother me at all, right? Like it's fine. I can just go do that, right? Where it's like at a previous level, right? That's like, okay, that's only a special occasion, or like I can't just do that without thinking about it, right? It's got to be more of a planned thing. To me, that's like a good example of like, and again, there's much different levels to it, but that was a level that I thought I hit, a while ago, right? That was like, I can just do that and not think about it.
Amen. To summarize, and what I tell people all the time, if they ask a question about that, is that it gives you the ability to facilitate spontaneity.